Okay, so, cannibals. You know, those people who eat other people. In today's video, I'm going to be delving into one of the darkest stories I've ever heard, and yes, it involves an earthling eater. And no, it's not Jeffrey Dahmer. What's unique about this individual is you may have seen him eating at your local restaurant, maybe walking in the street, or you may have even sat next to him on the metro home. That's right, this cannibal was set free, and his name is Issei Sagawa. Issei was born on August 26, 1949. And right from birth, it was apparent something was off about this little Japanese boy. He had a pretty comfortable and carefree childhood, with both his parents being extremely wealthy. His father, Akira Sagawa, was the president of Kurita Water Industries, a company still active to this day. His grandfather also happened to be an extremely successful editor for the Asahi Shimbun, one of Japan's largest newspaper publishers. So yeah, this guy came from money. But enough about his family members, let's talk about Issei himself. He grew up surrounded by farms and nature, experiencing a very peaceful way of life. Yet, he wasn't without some problems. Issei was born extremely prematurely, so much so that medical professionals gave him an almost 0% chance of life. He also developed enteritis, a small intestinal disease, leaving his growth stunted and body frail, both of which would carry on with him into adulthood. When he went into primary school, Issei became fascinated with other boys and girls, like much of us are when meeting new people and making friends. But for Issei, I don't think friendship was really in the picture. It was around this time when Issei began having his first thoughts about eating the thighs of his classmates. I mean, first of all, what kind of 7-year-old is thinking about eating other people? The only thing I could think about in the first grade was what kind of Lego I was gonna ask Santa for when Christmas rolled around. Like, how does someone just spawn ready to eat other human beings? The fuck? Anyways, because of Issei's introverted nature and the fact that he couldn't really play sports as well as the other kids, he developed an interest in reading and literature, serving him well throughout his academic life. After his schooling, he eventually obtained a master's degree in literature. But as Issei aged, he developed a weird fascination with foreign women. When he was 24, he saw this tall, blonde German girl, and Issei mentions that he was particularly drawn to her thighs. He also mentioned that she lived in the same block of apartments as his grandmother. This little nugget of information intrigued Issei. I mean, he had visited his grandmother enough times that he practically knew the apartment layout like the back of his hand. And so, like any other rational human might do, Issei decided to break into this girl's apartment. His ultimate goal was to kill her and then run away with some of her flesh. What a sicko. So, late one night, Issei crept into the woman's apartment. However, his plans were put to rest right away. The girl woke up, screamed, and pushed him down immediately. What was this guy thinking? Like, you're built like a fucking stick figure, dog. At least do some push-ups and bulk up a little before committing a homicide. God damn. Anyways, Issei was arrested and charged with attempted sexual assault, as he didn't reveal his true intentions to the authorities. Luckily for Issei though, coming from a family with never-ending pockets of money, he was bailed out, paid a settlement charge, and his criminal record was kept clean. I swear, rich people have all the luck. But Issei's little oopsie did have some negative consequences, as his family members were understandably distressed and angry with his actions. But ultimately, Issei received nothing more than a cheeky slap on the wrist. And in time, this lack of punishment would lead to the unimaginable. But real quick, before I tell you about all the shit Issei did, I just want to thank you all for your support on the channel. We hit 1,000 subscribers a little while back, and I still just cannot believe it. So yeah, thank you all for your continued support, and if you're new here and fuck with the content, go down and tickle the sub button a little. You know, just tickle it, you know, just go do it. Okay, so let's fast forward to April 26, 1977, coincidentally being Issei's birthday. Issei was ready to see the world and hopped on a flight from Tokyo to Paris in order to complete a PhD in French literature at Sorbonne University. It was there, in the capital of France, the capital of love, some might say, where Issei Sagawa met Renee Hartevelt, a Dutch student studying at Sorbonne University. Renee was beautiful, and standing at 5'10", she was almost a foot taller than Issei. God damn, he was tiny. Through their studies, Renee and Issei would eventually turn from classmates into friends, occasionally meeting for coffee and exchanging lecture notes. Nothing too crazy though. Now, as exams came around, the two of them began having dinner at each other's place, revising and preparing for the upcoming tests. As their relationship began to develop, however, Issei found it harder and harder to control his urges. In his mind, Issei had already established that he would eventually have to give in to his dark fantasies and kill someone, be that Renee or any other unsuspecting victim. Real quick, if anyone watching this right now thinks they have to give in to their dark fantasies of murder, please don't do it. Just don't. Anyways, throughout his time in Paris, Issei had begun to bring sex workers back to his apartment, and although he planned to shoot and then eat them, he'd always pussy out and fail to pull the trigger. On June 11th, 1981, Issei invited Renee over for dinner, and like the absolute academic weapon she was, she agreed to come over and do some additional schoolwork with him. Issei, however, had other plans. Issei really liked Renee, but not in the way you or I might like someone. Issei admired her good health and thought that by consuming her flesh, he might be able to absorb her energy, providing him with some health and beauty of his own. What the fuck, dude? This isn't fucking Agario or some shit where you can just consume the souls of other people and absorb all their XP. This guy's fucked. Under the guise of cooking up dinner, Issei left to another room in order to grab something, while Renee began to translate poetry for her upcoming assignment. That's when Issei struck, creeping silently up behind her, rifle in hand. With Renee having absolutely no clue what was happening, Issei raised the rifle, pressed it against her head, and pulled the trigger. Then, like the backbone lacking cretin he is, he passed out immediately. After regaining consciousness, he decided to continue on with his plan. He eventually cut up and consumed parts of Renee's body after using it for other means. He put the unused parts into his refrigerator before initiating his cover-up plan. Now, the plan to get rid of the evidence would have to be rock solid. He was in the middle of one of the largest cities on Earth, he's easily identifiable, and he'd never done anything like this in his life. So this is the plan he came up with. Issei grabbed 2 large travel bags, put Renee's body inside the bags, and called a taxi. Due to Issei being too frail and weak, the cab driver loaded the trunk up with Renee's remains, and Issei told him to head to Bois de Boulogne, a park in western Paris. Quick side note, I don't know if this is just a coincidence or what, but according to Issei himself, the cab driver noted how heavy the bags were and jokingly asked Issei if there were any bodies in them. If only he knew. Now, within the park are several lakes, some of which Issei had visited throughout his time at university. And so, his genius idea was to bag up Renee's body and dump them into one of the lakes. However, he had drastically miscalculated the timing, because he aimed to dump the body under the cover of night. However, when he got to the park, the sun was still shining, meaning he wouldn't be able to dump the bodies unseen. But with nowhere else to go, Issei paid the cab driver and got out of the cab. Needless to say, countless French locals saw this pale, frail, spineless dwarf get out of the car with his 2 massive travel bags. And as he took in the summer sunset, leaving his bags unattended behind him, a man began poking at one of his suitcases. "Is this yours?" the man asked Issei. "Nah, G," Issei replied. And so, as the man opened the bag, a woman behind them began to scream. Issei calmly walked away as a crowd began to form around the crime scene. His plan to get rid of the body had failed, and yet the question remained, would he ever get caught? Yes he would. Just 4 short days later, French authorities raided his property and formally charged Issei with the murder of Renee Hartfeld. Weirdly enough, Issei was actually happy to have been caught, as in his mind he'd finally be able to talk to someone about his desires. When questioned by the police, Issei's response was blunt and to the point. He told detectives that, "I killed her so I could eat her flesh." After the investigation was concluded, Issei was held for 2 years awaiting a trial, and yet again, his wealthy father threw money at the problem, investing in an amazing lawyer for his defense. Issei was eventually found to be legally insane, unfit to stand trial, and was sentenced to life in a French mental institution. But this is only the beginning to one of the most disappointing criminal trials of all time. Due to the nature of the murder, Issei's case caught a lot of attention from French media, and when the public caught wind that Issei would be spending the rest of his life in one of their mental institutions, they were enraged. No one wanted to spend their hard-earned tax money supporting this man's life, and they called to deport him back to Japan. The government eventually complied, and Issei was transported back to his home country. Because of this, his French murder charges were dropped, and since they were dropped, all the documentation which held the evidence of the crime he had committed was sealed, meaning it couldn't legally be accessed by foreign authorities. Unfortunately, this backed Japan's judicial system into a corner, and since they didn't have a strong case against Issei without the evidence, they had no choice but to let him walk free. So yeah, this guy was set free to roam the streets of Japan after murdering and munching on an innocent, hardworking student. Great. What the fuck has this world come to? Also, why the fuck is evidence sealed off from other countries? Seems a little counterproductive to me, but what do I know? I'm just a dumbass kid talking into a microphone. Obviously, Issei found it extremely difficult to find any employment due to him being, a cannibal. But like most mentally ill individuals, the media quickly became interested in Issei's story. After doing interviews and having multiple articles published about himself, Issei decided to write a book, already being well versed in the world of writing and literature. And so, he began writing articles and novels, making a name and income through informing the world of his heinous crimes. Ultimately, he would publish over 20 books about himself, and would even go on to make Lolita manga, a sexual comic based off of his murder of Renee Hartfeld. His publications eventually led to more media attention, with publishers creating several videos about his life. One of his most disturbing jobs was when he agreed to co-lead in an adult film, and the most fucked up thing about it was that he was only going to reveal he was a murderer after he had relations with the woman. Dog, what the fuck? That shit would cause some serious psychological effects, and whoever directed the film is obviously treating it like some kind of joke. Jesus Christ. So yeah, Issei never actually learned his lesson, and to this day, he has admitted he still has urges to eat other women. He's also stolen money from his parents in order to pay women for their time, and although some of them caught on to who he was, a lot of them didn't. The lack of consequences for this man is genuinely mind-blowing, and he remains free to this very day. So yeah, let me know what you think about the situation in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like as it took me a long ass time to make. Anyways, as always, it's been Mikel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.